Tonight on the Goblins Corner.
Our terrain series continues with The Matrix.
Dun dun.
That's how we roll. 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 That's how we roll.
Welcome to the Goblins Corner. My name is Eric.
And I'm Matt.
And tonight,
We're doing another portion of our terrain series, and we're doing The Matrix.
that's right. So we do a lot of fantasy stuff in this podcast, but we also are delightful fans of Shadowrun and other sci-fi games. And so tonight, we're going to give you a terrain series about our Electron home, The Matrix.
Indeed.
But before we get to that,
Got a question of the week?
every week,
It's almost like it's named that.
it's like it happens every single episode. So, Matt, what do we got?
Okay, so I'm going to stick on theme again.
Okay.
If you are in The Matrix.
I'm in The Matrix.
You.
Me.
Yes.
With my little icon, which we've established early on was an 8-bit gremlin.
Right.
Like very 8-bit, although everything else is not 8-bit that I do.
Right.
And I have glowing, I guess, sodium eyes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dope.
That sickly, peachish.
And when I'm saying I'm pixelated, I want this avatar to look like one of the
Like one of the original Super Marios.
No, I want it even more pixelated. Like I'm thinking Space Invaders.
Okay.
Does that
Yeah, a little Galaga action.
little Galaga action? Yeah, I'm thinking, not even 8-bit. It's just bit.
It's 1 bit. You're a square.
It makes Minecraft look great.
All right.
So we're talking about the avatars in The Matrix.
Right.
Okay.
What are your attack and defense animations? Just
Okay.
one of each.
As fitting, my attack animation would be my archetype grows large teeth and begins literally chewing off pieces of what other digital creation exists. So if I'm attacking an algorithm or, say, some black ice, I'm literally biting into it and chewing off pieces of black ice.
Nice. I'm for that.
Mm-hmm.
What's your defense?
It's also an attack algorithm
All right.
because the best defense is a huge offense. I would say it is some sort of program which boots the other creature offline.
Okay.
Forcibly jacking them out of the Matrix, or if it's like ice or something else like that, physically punting them to another node.
Okay.
So basically banishment or dismissal,
right.
but in the Matrix.
Yeah.
Now, we've established in several episodes that you are not necessarily one to be known as a hacker
No.
in the Matrix.
No.
But you do have a persona in the Matrix that you've described before, which is...
What'd I do? I think I did the old Guardian Yugoloth, the winged bear.
But you also said yourself, which is also kind of funny too. Either of which works.
And my response for what I would do works for either of those as well.
Okay.
For attack and defense.
So what's your attack?
So for attack, I'm going to pull out a bottle, take a big swig,
Breathe fire?
and breathe fire,
Sure. Love that.
which works for either of those.
Sure. Can be defense or offense, depending upon how you look at it.
My defensive animation is just going to be a swirling cloud of absolute cold.
That's cool. Just very polar bear-ish.
But if I get attacked, then the cold just begins to overclock the process and slow down what they're capable of doing.
See, I think also what would be fitting for you is if you were in just your usual persona, like you, instead of the winged bear, it should be just a hold signal. They're waiting for Comcast.
Just a buffer.
Yeah, they're just literally, it's like an immobilization program. They're just stuck on hold with a phone that's stuck to their head, and they're waiting to get on hold with, please, your call is important. You are 5,378 in line.
I learned something interesting about hold music recently.
Do tell.
So the length of the track that they do for the repeating link,
Yes.
the length of that determines how much they want you to just hang up and go away. So if it's a very short clip that repeats constantly,
Mm-hmm.
you are more likely to get irritated and hang up. But if it's a longer one, or if they're piping in music so that the song is consistently changing, then they actually want your business and want you to stay on the line so that they can solve the problem. So you can tell what kind of customer service a business actually has by the length of their music.
That's fascinating. Are you in customer service, or are you in some other profession which hates people? Write to us, info@goblinscorner.com, or you can reach me, Eric@goblinscorner.com, or
Me, Matt at goblinscorner.com.
and of course, you can find us on all the things. I feel I can say that because I was in customer service
I
at
know,
one point. And
yeah.
I hated people. I did tech support. It was terrible. All right, let's talk about.
And I like people, and I've never been in customer service.
You
I don't
should.
know.
You will hate people afterwards. All right, let's talk a little bit about The Matrix. We're doing a
Sure.
terrain series again, so we're going to have some specific criteria that we do in all of our terrain series. But first off, why are we talking about The Matrix?
Well, as you pointed out to me recently, there's a new movie coming out in
Oh,
December.
And it's great. We've seen the previews at this point, and it's delightful. It just came out this week when we recorded.
Right.
And because there are lots of games which do The Matrix.
Yeah.
Not just like video games, but also, I mean, Shadowrun obviously has The Matrix.
Cyberpunk.
It has its own version of that. There's White Wolf game Demon, which is kind of a version of like reality because they do all kinds of fun glitches with reality. There's all sorts of space games which have their own version of this as well.
Sure.
And some of them allude to it, and some of them are a little bit more in depth. But cyberspace is cool.
Yeah.
Whatever you call it cyberspace, call it
The Matrix, call it
Yeah.
whatever.
the interwebs. It's a series of tubes, guys. Any sci-fi game can have The Matrix as well.
Yeah.
So just because your game doesn't have it, you could theoretically interject your version of The Matrix, whatever you want to call it, into your campaign or game for fun, a bunch of interesting stories, and of course, to scare or irritate your players and provide just a little bit of interesting theme for your game.
And if they don't have rules for it, you can literally run it like combat for the person, have them pick a class, everything as if it's normal for them.
Yeah.
Except it, most of those skills take place in the Matrix.
Yeah.
Ta-da.
Ta-da.
There you go.
It's
Mechanics are already written
It's like
for you.
another plane.
Yep.
It's just like doing any other dimension. It just happens to be a virtual one. So let's start by saying, first off, what is the Matrix? What is the Matrix? Well, Neo, let me tell you what the Matrix is. I can't spin in my chair without knocking a bunch of crap over, so
Right.
I'm not going to.
Probably best.
Yeah. The Matrix, as we know it in the game,
Sure.
and as various authors like William Gibson, some sort of worldwide computer network. Now, we allude a lot to Shadowrun in this because it used the name Matrix most, and of course the movie, but it can be called whatever you want. We're
Right.
just calling it the Matrix because everybody knows what the hell we're talking about. You want to call it cyberspace, you want to call it, the electron highway, you want to call it something else that I don't really recall right now, then that's perfectly acceptable.
Sure.
But it is a worldwide computer network, much like the internet. It can be wireless, can be not wireless.
Just more graphically intense.
Yes, very graphically intense. What else is it?
It's a virtual reality network accessed through some sort of interface.
So it could be an Oculus,
Yep. Could be a cyber terminal or deck of some sort.
or could it just be jammed directly into the back of your skull
That's right. Just,
by some friendly tentacled androids that just want to use you for power, guys. They too have an Oculus Rift that they would like to use, but it requires batteries, and you happen to be the battery for their Oculus Rift.
sure.
That's levels of inception deep, my friend. So the entire Matrix is essentially a communications network,
Yeah.
right? Just various hosted systems which talk to each other, and they build the whole virtual landscape. And the way that I recall it being described in various books, mostly Shadowrun, was that there was kind of like a consensual hallucination that was based off of whatever Matrix program was kind of like the default. So think like HTTPS, right? So the different types of protocols that exist, whether you're FTP or HTTP or Usenet guys. If you're old enough to know what that is, and if you're under 30, you probably don't unless you're in IT. That is the landscape for just like the default, but it can look like anything.
Right. Individual internal networks have vastly different looks and feelings and style based off of whether or not it was coded by a corporation,
Mm-hmm.
an intelligent program, or just the person who owns or took over that particular node or area.
Yeah. And if you want to look at it like in terms that aren't too complex, it's like a browser. Like your consensual hallucination is the browser that you access the matrix through. So it would be, oh, look, everything I look at is based off of some kind of fantasy novel because it was coded that way for my eyes. Well, you're using the different version of this browser, like Firefox, whereas Google might be something stark utilitarian, and I don't know, the iOS version of the Matrix might be something you have that's locked behind a gigantic wall that you can't scale unless you pay money. I don't know. I'm getting ahead of myself on that. So the Matrix itself is default standard coded, looks vastly different according to what you're browsing with, or it can look like it can all be default depending upon your game.
Sure.
But the individual nodes, as you mentioned, can be vastly different. Could be a castle, could be any type of terrain that you can imagine. And that landscape is connected all together. So some things you can access easily, some things you got to break into to get to the next step. And this can be landlines or AR, wireless, a little bit of all three, whatever you want to determine when you build your matrix setup. It's all the same stuff, right? Communication. So
Yep.
How are you communicating? The biggest thing on that is lag and all that other stuff, right?
Sure.
Now, another thing you brought up, hackers or coders or whatever you want to call them in your game can mess around with the look and feel of the matrix, add their own things, kind of with the program some.
Can you imagine, like, you've got the fantasy filter on, right? And the matrix is cool and beautiful, and there's little sprites passing by carrying buckets full of information.
The little bits and bytes as they move.
Yeah. But then you come across a decrepit 1980s graffitied warehouse. Somebody is in control of that area.
Yeah, it's vastly different. It just looks horrible. That would be cool, right?
It would be very cool.
There's like a 1978 Oldsmobile Regency just sitting in the front of the building, and you kind of trot up on your horse as a knight. I'm on the Electron Highway. I'm the Electron Knight. What is this dark beast here? And you're like, oh, damn it. Isn't it this damn hackers infiltrated the Matrix with this stupid Oldsmobile? It's me, guys. I had that Oldsmobile, and I hacked that.
Is that what your Matrix is going to look like?
That
the
avatar
90s?
looks, yeah, my persona looks like a Pong character because it's so just pixelated. It's like, oh, God, everywhere he walks, he just corrupts the very Matrix with pixelated graphics. It'd be awesome.
That would be kind of funny.
They wouldn't be able to tell what anything is because they don't know how to read ASCII. I would change everything to ASCII art. It'd be awesome. So the Matrix can be a lot of different things, but primarily it's a landscape that you communicate through and adventure in. We've got a bunch of unique challenges for this specific terrain.
Just like we do with all our terrains.
Yeah. The first two that I think are most important are travel and time. So let's talk a little bit about traveling in the Matrix.
Travel takes, realistically, no time.
It's instantaneous,
right?
Roughly, unless, given the circumstances in the game.
Sure. Unless you as the GM,
whatever,
storyteller, wants it to take longer. Because areas controlled by certain entities are going to control the access speed that you're going to have unless you hack your way into it.
Yeah, so you're doing that hardware handshake, right?
Yep.
Go back to the modem dial-up and stuff like that. There's going to be some communication going on. It might be instantaneous perceptually in the real world for everybody else, but you're a decker, you've jacked into the Matrix, you're trying to get to the next node because you're bouncing across satellites or whatnot, and maybe one of them is restricted. You got to break into that.
Yep.
It might take 3 seconds to break into that or something, but it takes like 3 years or 3 months game time for you to break into that perceptually, right? And so the idea is it is as long as it needs to be for the story to make sense. Straight up.
Makes
Have fun.
sense.
Have fun. If you want your hackers or deckers, or what do you want to call them, to play a completely different game, which we've done in old school Shadowrun when the rules were terrible. Not terrible, but Matrix combat was terrible. Trying to do real combat. We literally had everybody do combat, and before they did their game, the day before, we had everybody playing deckers to do combat before that.
Right. So, in theory, look at it like this. If you were trying to shut down the security at the megacorp that your team was about to go invade, on Tuesday night, you and the rest of the deckers do your security run.
Mm-hmm.
On Wednesday night, all of the people playing deal with your successes and failures
As they run through
as they occur in real time.
Sure. Which is a lot of fun.
It is.
So you can have that fast and slow approach with your game. Now we mentioned the second part, which is time. There's Matrix time, and then there's real time, and that brings back up what we're talking about. This gives us a lot of really fun and interesting games. Now Shadowrun, I think around version 5, fixed Matrix combat by making most of it like AR, so it happens more or less in real time.
Right.
And less. I've spent 16 rounds in the Matrix for every round or something that's going on in real life, and that's fine. So you can play it like that too. If you want to play it literally round for round with everything else, again, it's your game. Play it with rules that make sense for you, and all of it's fun regardless. You can even say, well, look, just because you move faster in the Matrix, it might take your brain just as long to hack. So it may literally take just as long perceptually. Sure. We've got terrain. Let's talk a little bit about the terrain in terms of the Matrix.
All right. So if you don't have a filter on, or somebody hasn't coded an area, it's basically just monochromatic with electron hues.
Yeah, I'm thinking very William Gibson, right? There's just like black sky, the twinkling lights are the different nodes.
Yeah.
Or it could also be that movie, what is it, Tron?
Yeah.
It's not. He jumps into a video game, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I thought it was a pinball machine for some reason, but
no.
It's not. That's okay. It should be a pinball machine. What kind of world would that be?
I think that would have been a different
movie. That would be the steampunk version of Tron. Think about that.
No, I'm with it. That makes perfect sense.
That's dope. We should totally do that. There you go, guys. There's another character idea concept for you.
That could be a game, like a one-shot concept.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've got like a monochromatic type or electron neon hued default state. It could be anything you want it to be in your game.
Sure.
And it can be literally any setting you want to be in your game. All terrains and features can exist in the Matrix.
Yeah, and how those look and feel, whatever, is going to be based off of their filters or based off of what you, the storyteller, want to portray those areas as.
Literally every natural terrain type can be found in the Matrix. I say natural terrain type.
Yeah, I was going to say every unnatural terrain type.
Yeah, particularly, any terrain, really. But also, and this is something that you can also consider, a lot of urban terrain settings, which you don't often find in other games.
Right.
And we say urban, this could also be spaceports. You could literally be on a starship in the Matrix. Why not? Imagine how cool would that be to have like a starship combat thing going on, and the starship is the information packet that you're writing to get to the next space station, which is a node.
And you could have dogfights and such like that for the combat, like for fighting security and such. So if your characters are maybe getting tired of the rut and you want to do something different or new, this is a great way to kind of spice things up, right? Have a completely different world or setting for your Matrix combat or your Matrix terrain. Certain areas are controlled as domains by corporations, and so you'll get a lot of
ridiculously strange and obscure terrain as well. Maybe you give me an example of some of that, for example.
As technology for Shadowrun,
Mm-hmm.
they might do ancient Aztec style hallways or deep jungles with nodes being temples or what have you.
Like Mesoameric type stuff. Yeah. Whereas Rinranku might be more.
I mean, you could be traveling through the Japanese countryside, and each one of the nodes is a pagoda off in the distance.
Yeah. And Loftware has dragons.
Yes.
German dragons. Do German dragons drink beer, you think?
Almost certainly.
Yeah, I would approve of that. Let's talk about some of the natural dangers of the Matrix. Natural. Quote, unquote, natural.
So in addition to terrain dangers, you can also have the appropriate plants, animals, and other things that live in those terrains. And those equate realistically to glitchy code or intentional attack codes or what have you.
So here's an example. Bit rot.
Yeah.
Like imagine what happens if you're on like a storage platter and you're surfing the Matrix and there's bit rot on the data platter and it doesn't have redundancy and it's just slowly corrupting the drive. You might have your brain literally just dispersed into the Matrix and you wind up a vegetable.
Or you might end up the next danger in the Matrix.
Or you might format that platter and become an overlord in that particular domain. A lot of fun stuff like that. I would say that in general, most of the natural or unnatural dangers, whether it's, again, like the creatures and stuff like that, or just the various aspects, are generally stylistic.
Sure.
And I would say the best way to look at that is where physically in the Matrix are your characters or character, if you're just doing one, and describe it as such, right? So a lot of it, and this is where a good Matrix run differs from like a bad Matrix run in terms of storytelling. You really have to describe the setting, either through maps or through just general storytelling overall, because it's a three-dimensional thing, and you have to basically imagine this whole thing in your head.
Sure.
They don't make a lot of maps for Matrix runs.
They don't.
We should make some maps for Matrix runs. That'd be a lot of fun. We're going to do that.
Says the person who does art to the person who does no art.
Look, I'll get around to it, all right? I've got 50 T-shirt ideas as well. Okay, let's talk about surviving in the Matrix.
Sure.
Aside from natural dangers.
Well, as an alternate reality, basically the Matrix is as survivable as the particular terrain and element the node is composed of.
Yeah, because if you're rolling around and there's a bed of lava in the Matrix, it's going to feel and act like a bed of lava.
If somebody's firewall is a firewall,
you got to figure a way to get past that. Get your ass burned.
Yeah.
That's how it works. So your actions in a particular terrain or node are often styled according to the theme as well. So hacking that access point, you might bust down a door or you might dig for treasure. If you're Indiana Jones, you're an Indiana Jones type node. You might have to fight a dragon, and that dragon happens to be a passcode or whatever. It can be represented. So it can be metaphorical.
Right. You are launching macros to figure out the passcode before the dragon hopefully just boots you out and doesn't actually fry your synapses.
That dragon's going to be some black ice, man. I'm telling you. So death in the Matrix oftentimes is death in the real world. As Morpheus said, the body cannot live without the mind.
It's true. That's going to, once again, depend on the coding. Offensive/defensive coding could just as easily force you out and just boot you to the curb, might just knock you unconscious, or, as you said, just
get your brain fried. Now, one of the things I thought that was pretty interesting when they went to a lot of AR or wireless in the Matrix, there are like headsets for Shadowrun that you could wear so you're not directly nerve to wire interfaced. And when you get booted, you just have like a headache or it knocks you out, right? It doesn't kill you outright because it's not directly hardwired into your brain. But they suffer for that because their reaction time is slower.
Sure.
So there's a lot of interesting interplays you can have with that as well. Let's talk about the weather. What's the weather like in the Matrix? Is it always sunny?
Well, no, it's subject to the whim of the nodes, the programmers, and the hackers of any given area of the Matrix.
Anything you want.
Yep.
Much like, this is a good example of a mutable plane.
Mm-hmm.
So you could literally say that it is subject to the whim of the overgod or node, much like the deific planes in D&D.
Sure. I would want puddles that rain upward.
Of course you could. It could obey the laws of physics, or it could be a completely different type of physics engine. It could obey the laws of the Unreal Engine, where you can double jump and stuff.
Heck yeah.
A lot of parkour off of walls and stuff. I can fly with a rocket launch. Just shoot my rocket launcher and fly.
Yep.
I would love that.
Jump off the rocket.
Yeah, absolutely. In addition to the terrain, you've got wonderfully unique creatures. And there's a couple we'd like to talk. Talk about ICE, i.e. intrusion countermeasures, daemons, dummy programs and AI, and of course, other hackers.
Right.
So let's talk about ICE first. There are 4 types, but there can be way more than that. Shadowrun classifies 4 types.
Right.
And I haven't read the newest stuff. They might have more, but we've got white, trace, gray, and black. So what's white ICE first?
So white ice is, like I was talking about, generally does no permanent damage. It's used to monitor or impede someone's progress.
So a floating eyeball following you around, watching what you're doing. Could be something that throws up walls or changes the node so you can't sneak in.
Sure.
We've got trace ice, which finds you.
Which is suboptimal.
Yeah, because while you're jacked into the Matrix and you're doing your run, the trace ice finds you, and then it broadcasts your coordinates to the nearest Lone Star Security or Yakuza crime boss or whoever the hell you're hacking into.
Yeah, I was going to say, or you're hacking into a corp and they literally just start launching helicopters off the top of the building.
They're sending the mage, bro. They're sending the wage mage on the astral plane to get there in a hurry and then lob an urban renewal on your building. Flatten it to the ground. I'm just saying that's what I would do.
Sure, I'm aware. That's always option 1.
If you've never listened to me talk about Shadowrun, it's always Urban Renewal is the first spell that I would learn. And Powerball. Those are also good too. Gray Ice. What's Gray Ice do?
Gray ice is ice that causes permanent damage to your hardware.
Yeah, so your Cyberdeck or your Oculus, whatever you're running with. So it could be some feedback, burns your out.
Yep.
Just burns it out. And now you might be booted from the Matrix with a splitting headache or comatose because it's fried your board.
Or you might be okay, but you're out a whole lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Or if you're, rigged into a vehicle, now you're blind. That's
yeah, because a lot of the rigging vehicles use cameras. They don't actually have windshields. Yeah, that would suck.
That would suck a lot. Mostly, a lot for you, but also for anybody that happens to be traveling with you. Now imagine if you're on a plane.
No, it sucks for anyone traveling around you.
Hey, good point. Finally, we have black ice. Now, black ice straight up harms you. Biofeedback, frying your brain, causing your blood vessels to burst.
It is designed to attack the actual decker.
Yeah, and it should be noted, while a lot of it is damage, there's nothing to say that you can't have like an AI or an algorithm hack you as a human. Or metahuman in the case of Shadowrun.
Sure. Yeah, there's no reason they couldn't implant suggestions or things like that.
Could happen.
Yep.
And that would suck. Happened in the Matrix movie, right? Agent Smith got in. That dude made him bad. Now let's talk about programs. So we got daemons, the AE, dummy programs, and AIs. So those are all just some sort of semi-intelligent to sentient electronic creature. And these can look like anything.
Sure.
Again, stylized usually to the node, but if they're AIs, they might be stylizing the node.
Yeah, or they could be in a node and have stylized themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Just They choose their avatar just like you do. They're intelligent.
When in doubt, go Spidery Cthulhu. That's always a fun horror theme to some kind of electronic spider-like AI being that's just slowly infecting the Matrix. Could be anything, though. Could literally be anything that you want. Be flavorful with that. Dummy programs, you're thinking low-level creature monsters or big nasty monsters if it's like an attack program. Draw from any of the books that you particularly read.
Sure.
Draw from any of the movies or stories that you want to watch. And again, flavor it according to the node that you happen to be in. If you're in a fantasy node, hey, look, I've got all of these D&D books sitting behind you, Matt. I can use any of that in the Matrix.
If you're in a nature node, Encyclopedia Britannica.
Sure. All of the natural beasties and stuff. Maybe you even go something like prehistoric. That Ankylosaurus is actually an attack program.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. It'll wreck you, dude. Then you're done. So, a lot of fun stuff.
Imagine biofeedback for that. You get booted out of the Matrix and your shins are broken. It's just a terrible day.
That would be awful. You know what I was thinking is have a Matrix setup that's all underwater, and the black ice is a bunch of megalodons.
Nice. I can see that.
That'd be vicious. Or polar bears. Polar bears are scary, guys.
Orcas.
Orcas are also very scary.
Orcas are awful.
There's a reason they call them killer whales.
Yes.
Now, it should also be noted that some of the unique creatures, which can be NPCs, friendlies, or oftentimes not friendlies, other hackers.
Yeah.
Or honestly, anybody really in the Matrix. But let's just say, in terms of combat, other hackers. And this could be Deckers, the Electron Cowboys, Technomancers.
Sure.
I guess Cyber or Technomancers, whatever we want to call them.
Right.
People who magically jack into the Matrix.
All of that. And somebody just tooling around.
These could be
like
reoccurring villains.
But, I mean, you could literally bump into cyber tourists.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That totally can happen. You can imagine just a bunch of people going, I was just looking for the porn site. Where the hell am I?
What happened here?
You run into this guy. He's looking for porn. He's got kind of a shady looking icon. It's all blurry.
Right.
He's trying to obscure his identity. He's looking for, I'm just looking for this is the porn node. This is, damn it. Like this is, I got past the firewall somehow.
Well,
can you imagine a script kiddie? And it's literally like a cat with a bunch of like scripts.
Yep.
That would be awesome. Again, another hacker.
Sure.
That'd be a lot of fun to play with. All right. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Matrix, the unique cultures, and so forth, but we'll be right back.
After these messages.
You with the face. Do you like what we have to say?
Help our channel rise from the depths like the mighty Godzilla.
Please like and subscribe and ring the bell and do all of the necessary YouTube.
What he said.
If there are any topics you would like us to cover, goods or services you would like us to review, or if you would like to sponsor an episode, we would love for you to contact us at info@goblinscorner.com.
And we're back.
Welcome back.
So we're talking terrain series, The Matrix, Chummer. And we've been talking a little bit about some of the quote-unquote terrain, natural landscape of The Matrix. Also talking some of the unique creatures or denizens of the Matrix that you might find. And you mentioned just average people wandering about. And let's talk about some of the cultures that live in the digital cloud.
Sure. Well, obviously you're going to have the culture of any individual or group of hackers.
Oh, yeah. So hacker individuals, hacker groups, hackers are happening up in the Matrix.
Sure. And I think we've already pretty much found out in the real world as it exists now. Different groups of hackers certainly have different cultures.
Absolutely. When it comes to hacker groups or hackers in general, give them some kind of backstory. And it can be an adventuring group type style or a mage guild, which we talked a lot about in previous episodes. Any type of group. Criminal organization, perhaps.
Sure. It could even be groups of people who are trying to do good, like hacktivist groups.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. There's lots of different ways you can flavor a hacker group or a online hacker of some sort, some kind, just any type of electronic professional, I guess would be a very PC way of saying this. Have a storyline that you can use, which then allows you to elaborate. Now, most of your players aren't going to care.
Right.
We know this.
Sure.
But they might. They might want to investigate. So if you're not used to designing groups or guilds or whatnot, go listen to some previous episodes. Hit us up. We can help you out with that. We might even provide a list of some NPC hacker groups at some point that you can use. And if you just want to throw something real quick, do a couple bullet points, who, what, where, call it a day.
Yep. And why.
And why. Yeah, always the why. Now, as well as hacker groups, we also have
Techno Cults.
Yeah, Matt's all about the Techno Cults. What are we talking about when we're talking about Techno Cults, man?
So you've got groups of people who are organizing to find the ghost in the machine or to figure out how to become the ghosts in the machine.
Yeah.
You know, how to reach enlightenment through technology.
Absolutely. And this can be techno cults in like the more spiritual sense, or we mentioned technomancers.
Yeah.
So it could be something like that. People who are like magically immersed in the matrix as well. Kind of their magical version of the astral plane or some sort. And you can flavor this a lot like a religious group or, again, an arcane group.
Yeah.
Very easy to do. Some stylistic stuff. We've got corporate hackers and deckers as well. So just corporate wage slave, right?
Yep.
Chilling in the matrix. Maybe they're professional IT folk.
Yeah. They could be on the security side of things, or they could be on the corporate espionage side of things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We've got what is called God Grid Overwatch Division, and this is some of the newer versions of the Shadowrun. It's basically G-men, right? They police the Matrix. A bunch of white hats.
Yeah. Lone Star for the Matrix.
Pretty much. How are you going to make them different from, say, the corporations? And that's really what it comes to. Flavor them. I would make them slightly more menacing. Definitely with suits and ties, you know, the old black suit and such.
See, I would do them as old style bobbies from Great Britain.
Oh.
With the hard hat with the truncheon.
Yeah, you could do that. Make them all look like Sam Vimes from Discworld.
But they all look exactly alike.
Yes. Speaking of things which look all exactly alike, another group that you can also have as a culture are intelligent AIs.
Sure.
I mean, there's nothing to say that they have to be human playing in the Matrix, and that would be kind of fun. Little sprites floating around, having their own culture. What would be like maybe semi-intelligent programs that have specific algorithms that do repetitious things? Like the Matrix could have its own ecosystem, if you will. Imagine worms that crawl through the Matrix that when they find old bit-rotted programs, they destroy them and free up the hard drive space.
That's a cool concept.
Not really a culture, but I mean, it's something that I was just thinking about.
And you could have people who would literally write Robin programs to pick up worms and sift through that data to see if there's anything useful.
Yes. So maybe you have like a series of internet gardeners who cultivate secrets.
Yeah, you could literally have, like you said, an ecosystem.
Yeah. Agents-wise, of course, I'm also thinking like Agent Smith from the movies Matrix.
Sure.
Nothing wrong with having some of that stuff as well, depending upon your game. If you're in the dystopian future, hey, maybe everything's the Matrix.
Could be.
Could happen. And of course, and this is probably the largest group of or culture on the Matrix, everybody else. Yeah. Everybody else, every other asshole on the planet, right? So wage slaves, mom and dad trying to find something on TV, just the average user that the Matrix was made for. And this is something that you don't see a lot in games that are run. Shadowrun's a good example. It's like when you get on the Matrix, it's like, oh, everybody's a damn hacker. Not necessarily. How many hackers exist in real life now?
Right.
I mean, there's a good number.
Right, but percentage-wise,
Not that high.
right.
I mean, just knowing the technical proficiency of most people now, it's,
I
some people,
understand more about hacking than your average person, and my knowledge is woefully short.
yeah, and most people can't check their email without an instruction booklet. So think about that.
I basically know enough to understand how much I don't know.
Fair enough. Now, finally, we have several fun, unique themes that the Matrix is composed of. And so let's talk a little about those themes, and we can get to maybe some story options as well.
Sure. I mean, the first one is pretty obvious. Cyberpunk.
Yeah, Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk's always going to be, I mean, it's bred into our concept of the Matrix from all of the dystopian authors that have done anything cyberpunk over the years, and I'm not going to list all of them. There's more than just William Gibson or Neil Stevens. There's a whole bunch of authors that have written stuff over the years. Awesome stuff. Go check out your library. Go download some books on Amazon or preferably someplace that pays their authors,
Right.
and dive into that cyberpunk genre, because the more you know about that, the better you can really make a fun Matrix game.
I agree. Alternate reality is a good theme to check out.
100%, because it is an alternate reality. And what is reality as well? So what is real is a fun theme to explore.
Because if it can affect you, and if it can cause you to live or die, how much reality is in this alternate reality?
Could be a lot of it. Maybe
Right.
you're still jacked into the Matrix and you never know.
Yep.
A fun theme to explore is a cyber heist, or any type of breaking and entering into a corporation, smashing through that node, busting some membranes, right? Getting that loot. That's fun.
Sure.
Crime scene, baby.
Can you imagine a hacker that is literally self-stylized as a cat burglar?
Yes.
Like just a bag full of burglary tools?
I see him as Santa. Santa with a
Nice.
big sack, jumping down all of the Matrix nodes. I got a little present for you. It's an algorithm that decrypts everything.
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome. We've talked about the concept of AIs and what it means to be human.
Sure.
That's an awesome concept theme to explore when you're running a Matrix game. There's nothing better, right? It's fun because it makes you wonder when especially you're playing like a Decker, is that program just a program, or is it playing dumb?
Right.
And that add a little paranoia into your campaign if you do. I love paranoia, so both the game and interjecting it into games.
Sure. It's like a little anglerfish.
Yeah,
right?
just a little emotional stab you stick into the back of their spine. What else do we have theme-wise?
Security and privacy.
Yeah, so going sneakers, or hey, what about a Matrix game where you have to lock something down and prevent other hackers from accessing it?
Yeah. Like a cybernetic siege.
Yes. And puzzles overall is another theme to explore when you're talking like privacy and security. This is something that we should probably explore in a future episode in terms of like how to run a good puzzle game in a RPG, because sometimes you do them right, and sometimes it's a 5-hour just hot mess.
Yeah. Just nobody cares by the time everything's like, did we
They're
just
taking the table and just throwing it over. Screw this. If you can run them right, or you can run them into the ground. Technomancy is another one that is a fun theme to explore as well.
yeah, magic and machine.
Yeah, and we're talking about Shadowrun. Perfect thing, right? You can also do this in Starfinder,
Sure.
and I'm sure there's a couple other games that I don't feel like. You know what I would like to see, actually? Talk about magic and machines. I would like to see a Matrix run in Star Wars or Star Trek, because Star Trek has the holodeck.
Yeah. They've actually touched on that in some episodes.
Well, every time they do a holodeck run, the holodeck program comes alive and tries to take over the ship. In every single series that has happened, I'm willing to bet.
Well, not the original one.
That's a good point. And they didn't have that. They didn't have the holodeck. But every time they had a holodeck, it was there rocking. What it means to be human, right? We talked about that a little bit, but also what it means in terms of perceptions. How do you perceive your environment, whether it's time or travel, as we mentioned before?
You've got data and data as treasure.
Yeah.
Because information is power, especially in any world where you've got a matrix type setup.
My bits turned to coin, baby. That was a terrible joke.
It was.
Information is power is something to explore, and it's always fun. And that's a fun game to play. As imagine a group of Shadowrunners that are all different aspects of information brokers. You've got a hacker. You've got a person who's like a rigging kit, like a rigger that has maybe they have long range drones that spy on people. You've got a mage that just creeps around in the astral digging up secrets.
And a street Sam that's just the face.
Just the face. Yeah, absolutely. A street that has maybe multiple faces. A street Sam that is
just a Velcro face.
just plaster face. Can be anybody.
Yeah.
It's freaking spy. That is an awesome game. We got to play that, dude. That would be a fun game. You just do information runs against various corporations and sell it for loot.
Speaking of corporations, corporate espionage is a fun theme to work with.
Just wrote another campaign setting for you guys. Go have fun with that. Corporate espionage is fun because it's always just going to be one job. It's a simple job, guys. Just get in there and get out. It's never simple. It's never, ever simple.
No.
When the toxic shaman shows up, you know that you're screwed. Where the hell did he come from? Who knew you had 15 gallons of hazardous uranium just sitting there? Toxic shaman got half his hair. He looked kind of like Sloth from the Goonies.
Yeah.
Casting up this gigantic aqueous mobile thing with tendrils, and when it hits you, it burns through. The street Sam's in pieces. The mage has already fled. Decker's just screaming, "Oh my God!"
And the rigger drives off.
Yeah, drives off because he was still in the bus. And finally, meat and machine. What does it mean when you cross-bleed into the different versions of technology versus natural, right?
Right. When you're jacked directly into a machine, where does one end and the other start?
That's a fun thing to explore for a theme.
Yep.
All right. So we've got a couple of story options. And this is not an exhaustive list, but it's good enough for this show.
Sure.
We sat down and we wrote about, 15 of these, I think? A few minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah. But these are some fun ones that we thought we'd like to share that you can maybe get started doing some fun Matrix runs in the Matrix. So
story seeds.
Yeah, story seeds. Thank you. Story seeds, which grow into story trees. Hackers seek to steal data from a particular corporation or individual. So there it is. Easiest Matrix run there, right? Never easy. But that's the easiest one to write.
It is a simple story.
Yes.
Hackers are hired to sabotage a particular line of research.
Got to get in, jack it up, get out.
Yep.
Hopefully without providing a trail. A cult of techno shamans seeks to find the ghost in the machine. Ooh, the ghost is there serving porn. I just make myself laugh sometimes. A rogue AI is secretly helping random people. It's like the lottery, guys.
Yeah.
This AI is just helping just random people, and the runners have to find out why and who the next helped person is. Now, let's put a spin on this, because I just thought of this. Maybe the AI's version of helping random people is actually killing them.
Could be.
And the runners have to find out why, because maybe one of their members is next on the list.
And how would you know?
He would tell you ahead of time. You have a little golden ticket, just like Willy Wonka.
An AI serial killer.
Yeah. That'd be cool.
Fun.
That'd be fun.
The party is on the run, and they have to hide all of their traces from the authorities.
So you've got to pull a quick fade. How are you going to pull that quick fade? The entire series of games could be erasing your digital presence, and you are actively being sought the whole time. Remember we talked about storylines in terms of don't start in a bar? This is a perfect example. Start the game, your Shadowrun game, you're on the run. You're literally driving away from the corporation.
Right.
There's hot lead following you, and you start there. That is a cool way to start a game.
I agree.
I agree too. That's why I put that down. The players explore a multi-level reality, a shell world within the matrix. So think Inception. So they get into a node, and there's another world in that node. And then they go into another node in that node, and it's another world. So you could go multiple layers deep. I'm thinking like virtual machines, when you spin up a virtual machine online. It could be something like that. You might be magnitude of orders deep, like 3 or 4, 10, 15. And what's real at that point? That'd be tough to run, but what a head case it would cause for your player characters. Like, wait, what version of reality I'm in? You jack out of the Matrix, you're still in the Matrix.
Right.
Jack out of the Matrix, you're still in the Matrix.
Yeah, because you're going to have to jack out of the Matrix for each iteration of the world that you've entered.
Bingo.
Yeah.
That's kind of a move, actually. But I think someone should run that. That'd be fun.
Well, the thing is if you're being chased by something in the center world, they're going to follow you from world to world, right? So they follow you out. If you were really wanting to play a move, have that same AI be a rigger so that when you get finally out to the real world, it's got drones.
Now it's maximum overdrive. There's cars chasing you and helicopters shooting at you and stuff. Oh, that's awesome. Yes. Yeah, there you go, guys. We don't play fair.
No.
What else do we have?
Technomantic warlock pacts, like Pact of the Machine, or for a patron, Ghost of the Machine.
That's cool. So you're thinking more of like a D20 modern type style? Okay. We could do that. Here's a good one. Players are on a job or an adventure, and they realize their day-to-day is not right. Are they trapped in an alternate reality? How do they get out? What's waiting for them when they do? So it's the storyline of the Matrix, right?
Right. Once again, if you want to be a bastard, it's just somebody setting up a surprise party.
Yes.
They have to fight their way out, and when they finally get out, surprise!
It's terrible.
So, I love the concept of this. A hacker coliseum.
Thunderdome.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2 hackers enter, 1 hacker leaves. And that's what a simple way to do it. You're maybe one of your players or the whole group is fighting in a coliseum against other digital participants.
Yeah.
That's it. That can be the whole campaign. Just being a bunch of digital gladiators.
It could be. Or, if you've got a player who wants to be a famous hacker, man, sooner or later, you got to jump in a blood bowl.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to put a spin on this and say maybe you are jacked into some kind of war bot and you're fighting like battle bots. And in the middle of that, someone hits you with the program and now you're fighting on the Matrix and you're still fighting in real life. But for every couple of minutes of Matrix combat, you do 1 blow in actual combat. That'd be kind of cool too.
Could be.
A little Inception level as well. We've also got a couple other things. An electronic treasure map. It's a very simple story option.
Yeah. Somebody gives you
Some data points.
a thumb drive. Yeah.
Geocache of some sort. Got to find that stuff. Maybe do a little sleuthing, right? What else we got?
The group must stop an evil hacker from taking over the world or framing the group or stealing something. You stop the evil hacker.
Yeah, so maybe you're not the Decker or you're not a group of hackers. Maybe you have to stop a group of hackers. How do you do that when you can't access the Matrix? Or how do you do that if you can? What's to stop the bad guy from taking over the world? Only you.
Yeah, you're the only one that knows it's an issue.
Can't call Renranku. Can't call Lone Star because they never show up on time.
Right. And if you call Renraku, they're going to want to know why you were in their system to find this.
That's right. The party's hacker is comatose while his mind or her mind roams the net, and you guys have to get the person back before they starve to death. They're off on holiday, just wandering the Matrix. You got to do a Matrix run to go find the person. Maybe they had a little mental split.
Sure.
Maybe they just can't get back.
A rogue program has infiltrated somebody's meat body and is rampaging using the meat body.
Yeah. How cool. That's it. Again, Agent Smith gets in, makes the person bad.
Possession.
Straight up possession. Electronic kind. And finally, and I love this, a quote-unquote zombie virus has been spreading to people who have datajacks or access to their brain to wire to the Matrix. Maybe some program gets in, just like a virus in real life, but it causes people to do some kind of 28 days later psychopathic craziness. And when they bite other people, maybe it electrochemically spreads, making other people crazy. Or it just could infect people that have datajacks.
Or if you wanted to use this as like a Walking Dead, what have you type scenario, datajacks are so ubiquitous up to this point
that everybody's got one.
That almost everybody's got it. Yeah.
It'd be like a zombie virus infecting our cell phones now.
Yeah.
That would be cool. I love all of that. So there you have it. Some fun, entertaining themes, story options, terrain, and individual creatures that you can use for your next Matrix run. Did we miss anything? Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. Write to us, info@goblinscorner.com, or you can reach me, Eric@goblinscorner.com, or
me, Matt at goblinscorner.com.
We're on all of the things. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube, and Twitch as
Goblins Corner.
We also are on Instagram as
The Goblins Corner.
Mm-hmm. Do you like our show? Please subscribe to the podcast on your favorite player, YouTube, and Twitch.
And click the 5 stars and give us a review on iTunes, YouTube, Podchaser, all of the things. It feeds the hungry algorithm.
Gets more people to our show.
Yes.
Helps everybody else play some games, run some Matrix combat, and in general, we try to teach people to have fun.
And if you want one more little story concept for running a game in the Matrix, the hungry, starving algorithm.
The hungry algorithm is the ghost of the machine?
Yeah.
I love all of that. That's all the time we have for tonight. Once again, my name is Eric.
And I'm Matt.
And we'll see you next time.
Good night.
The Goblins Corner is written and produced by Eric Holden
and Matt Staples.
Show song by the mighty D20.
This is a Subterranean production.
Basie.